Welcome into a brand new episode of the Whole Story Podcast, another one via Zoom. It's one of the newest inventions. And I was actually, Fabian, I was talking with Jason Stark, who was on this show earlier this week off camera. And I said, Skype kind of blew a 3-1 lead. If you're
Yeah,
engaging whether or not online technology using camera and, Skype, I think Skype blew it a little bit.
yeah, they definitely did. I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but Zoom really hopped in there. I mean, we were lucky at the Athletic that whenever we'd have like video conferencing calls, since we're all working so remotely anyways, that we sort of
Mhm.
already had Zoom set up. But I don't think even I expected like it to blow up the way it has with just the current situation. I know Angels are still doing traditional conference calls, but some organizations are doing like Zoom calls and all the kinds of
Mhm.
different technology that. And for a lot of guys, especially front office guys, it's either they're familiar with it or they're still trying to figure all of this out. So, but yeah, you're not kidding about Skype blowing through on lead. I think also FaceTime got lapped a little bit too.
Yeah. Did you use Zoom before everything happened?
Yeah, it'd be like once a week we'd have like an
Oh
all
wow.
hands meeting or like some sort of staff meetings every once in a while,
Yeah.
just because the way our site works is like we have some offices, but like most of us are never really in there for the most part unless
Mhm.
we're working at HQ. So the biggest way for all of us to communicate at once instead of like 400 or however many staff members we have hopping onto a conference call is a Zoom call like this. So
So
it's
you're ahead of the
you can,
game.
yeah, a little bit. I mean, I had it downloaded on my laptop. I've used it before, and I
Mhm.
guess as ahead of the game as you can get with this.
So again, you were talking about the Angels, and obviously you cover the Angels.
Mhm.
What has really been the most disappointing side of it? Because I feel like, in terms of the last few seasons, this was one of the most highly anticipated Angels season in the last few recent years.
Absolutely. I think anytime you can sort of, I don't know if it's necessarily like winning the offseason. They didn't necessarily sign their top target for Cole, but they still got the second best free agent on the market
Mhm.
in Anthony Rendon. I mean, they added to their starting pitching, which they needed to do. I know they didn't get the ace that people wanted them to get, but they still had, they clearly improved going into this year. And I think with the A's, I mean, they won 97 games back to back years, but you could never really know with how the roster is built, like how well they could sustain that, knowing that this Astros run, I mean, they've lost some pieces and they're going to lose pieces after this year. This felt like sort of a window where the Angels could really
Mhm.
move into contention. And yeah, I mean, now all of a sudden, everything's on pause. I mean, in a certain regard, like if the season does wind up starting later and it's a shorter season, it does help the Angels a couple of aspects. I mean, it helps get their pitching healthy. It gets a full season possibly of Shohei Ohtani being a two-way player. Griffin Canning can be back for a full season. But other than that, I mean, like it's still difficult to not have a full season of Anthony Rendon in his prime, a full season of Mike Trout in his prime. I mean, those are two of the top 10 players in the game. And all of a sudden, a decent amount of what their best years should be are all of a sudden sort of washed away for right now.
You bring up a great point about the advantages if it is a shortened season. Obviously, it is. And really, if there is a season, because simply
Yeah.
there are so many unknowns. And I know as you are a reporter, you have so many questions and you can only get so many answers. And there aren't a lot of answers just because of how many things that no one knows. When you look at the positives, trying to find some sort of positive out of the current issue that not only baseball is dealing with, but everywhere across the country is dealing with. What would be one of the biggest positives that comes out of this situation for the Angels?
I think actually numbers wise, I mean, I think if you have a smaller season, shorter season, like there's a lot more variability that can happen. So if the Angels say there's like a 100-game season, they get off to a hot 20-game start, it's going to last a lot longer
Mhm.
than it would over 162 games. So I mean, it's going to be more important than ever to get off to a hot start. But I think just a smaller sample just leads to a lot more probability that the Angels could possibly run away with the AL West if the Astros start off slow, if the A's start off slow, if the Rangers don't necessarily come together. So I think that creates a lot more window. But on the flip side, I mean, injuries are going to matter so much more. And like I mentioned before, I mean, the Angels are going to have to rely on Griffin Canning and Shohei Ohtani coming back healthy for the entire season. And while there's a smaller season, there's obviously less time for them to get hurt. The possibility still exists, especially for a guy like Canning, who just received a PRP injection in his elbow. They're still trying to figure out when he would even be ready to pitch. He's just now starting a progression. So he has any setback with that, that would obviously be very serious for what it means for the Angels' postseason chances in a shortened season. And same thing if Shohei Ohtani has any sort of injury concerns like he has the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. I mean, kind of walk me through what is it exactly like covering a player like Mike Trout?
Um, it definitely makes how you judge other players a little bit differently, just because I mean, there's a certain expectation whenever you have a Trout at bat or something like that. I know the athletic part of like what they encourage is us being able to actually watch the games, but there's just a certain different level of attention that's always paid whenever he's up to bat or whenever there's a ball hit out to center, just because of how good of a player he is. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think it's something that always sort of known, like even before I was covering the Angels, just how good of a player he was. You could see his baseball reference page and just see how obviously all the black ink is there. You see the war leaderboards, you see the awards, and you see the highlights. You know how good of a player he is. But I think day in and day out, just how consistently he is that level of player, and that even when has a game where he's like 0 for 4 or 2 strikeouts, he still puts together a good at bat, makes a good play in the gap, goes first to third really well. I mean, he does just about everything pretty well on the baseball field. I think as a hitter, the last couple of years, he's really just evolved to from being a good hitter to being probably the best hitter in the game right now, just as far as his ability to obviously be at the plate, uh, have good discipline, but also now his power is taking another level in the last year or so.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, this podcast is more centered around your career, and you graduated college back in 2016 and
2017, yeah.
2017, but you were also covering the Angels. You started covering the Angels in 2016. So, what was that experience like for you covering the Angels, but also still in school?
It was cool. I mean, MLB.com used to have an internship program, a really good internship program for a number of years. And a lot of different MLB writers and people beyond that have come up from that program. Guys like Alden Gonzalez over at ESPN, a good number of the current MLB.com
Mhm.
recruiters. Actually, 3 of the 4 of us on that Angels used to be MLB.com intern, myself, Maria Torres, and Bollinger. So I think, I mean, it was a great opportunity. An opportunity, especially being at Arizona State, being in that position where I was. The person who was actually running that internship program was actually based out of Phoenix, so it worked out really well.
Mhm.
2016, I had a chance to intern covering the Angels, and then right after I graduated, I turned again covering the White Sox. I think that sort of cemented really what I wanted to be doing long term, whether it be what I wanted to be long term. Because I think baseball, there's a certain amount of access, a certain part of the rhythm of a 152 game schedule. I think is a grind to cover. It's always it's very unique.
Mhm.
Sports, and I think that access and availability just allows you to tell a lot of different stories that I wouldn't be able to tell necessarily in other sports as effectively.
You mentioned finally finding out something to cement basically your love and passion for what you do currently now. What was one of the moments that came to you when you were interning, either covering the Angels or the White Sox while still in college, that kind of showed that this is what I want to do?
I think it was just something about that entire summer where I really just I wanted to be at the ballpark. And obviously, we're like we had a schedule where we were on and off, especially for home games. Pretty much worked almost every home game, but a
Mhm.
couple times like I was scheduled to be on. I just wanted to be at the ballpark, so they had me at the ballpark, and I still managed to work on different side projects. I knew I wanted to be in sports journalism. That's a big reason why I was at Arizona State to begin with, and I obviously covered different sports there. I covered football, basketball, hockey, baseball. I think just something about like that everyday clubhouse access, being in the room, getting a chance to chat up with guys, and having it be just something that's part of your everyday routine, but also something different, something that I could really grew to appreciate. And I think I mentioned earlier, but Gonzalez, he was the Angel at the time, and he was huge for me that year, giving me the freedom to sort of explore what I liked and didn't like about it, but also just being a guiding force. And he's on to this day when Angel's point saying hello and thanking him, because I mean he's such a big influence on who I am as a writer now. I think I can thank that friendship for him enough.
What would you say the best advice you received one of those summers was?
I think the biggest thing, especially, it's something I still have to keep reminding myself about the athletic now, because I think we have a freedom to like write big and write longer form pieces. But I think the biggest thing is don't focus on the quote that you're trying to get. Like you're having a conversation with people. First of all, you can put limits, but also it's about information as much as anything else. I think if you can get like a little nugget that's so much more important to what your story can be, as opposed to on giving some glowing quote about someone. I think if a guy can give you like a little anecdote and maybe not be the best quote, he still is someone who's very important to talk to. And I think that's something that I've learned rather than just relying maybe on the certain couple guys who you know are good quotes. There's people that just know how to sort of give you that information that you need. And there's a variety of people you can talk to help build stories. And that's one of the bigger things I learned.
What would you say, and you're talking about the long form, basically stories that the Athletic is famous for? That's kind of the one of the highlights that the Athletic has for their company is offering those in-depth looks at different stories that a casual baseball or sports fan as a whole simply don't know. But what would you say one of the biggest challenges of writing one of those long form pieces is?
I think a lot just because it takes a lot of work, obviously. I think the biggest thing for me is sort of managing what I'm working on a certain day. Like I'll go into the ballpark a given day and have 3 or 4 different projects I'm working on at a given time, and that gives you the freedom if need for that day for one story isn't in the clubhouse, that sort of pivot, go to a different story. Like I enjoy
Mhm.
that part of it, but also just like having some your mind have a different projects you're going on, while sort of having in the back of your mind some of the new moments is something that is a balance I've worked like, and I think towards the end of the last year I definitely got better at. But I find myself like especially early on, like most of my work wasn't even at the ballpark. It was sort of at home trying to figure out like what I was working on, certainly scheduling different things, and trying to figure out a time to write some of. I obviously they give us some freedom to be able to push stuff back and take our time with things, but also there's a certain part of me that wants to
Mhm.
really get stuff turned, get stuff done quickly. So I think balancing that schedule of just all these different things going on is the one thing that it may be a challenge for someone coming from newspaper background or something like a breaking news background, with more of what I did in college and with MLB.com when I was interning there.
It seems like you kind of have the control of freedom, but obviously you still have to pitch ideas and be that creator to still come up with ideas that can be engaging for the listeners or to someone or readers or someone that has never read The Athletic before. What's been one of your most fun or interesting ideas that maybe you pitched but simply is kind of on the back burner for right now?
There's a couple that I think just the timing of when the shutdown happened kind of cut those off. I think one of them I finally managed to finish up was on Dylan Bundy. He got traded to the Angels. It turned out that same day he got engaged, and that was something he'd already been planning for months. Obviously, it was the first time he'd ever been traded before. He was on vacation, really hard to get a hold of when he got traded. So telling that getting a chance to tell stories, see something that's still very important, even if it's all going on. But I mean, there's other quirky stuff like I was trying to work on some stuff like 20 years ago at an Angels game. At Angels spring training camp. Some pictures as part of a show and tell project, sort of like one of those presentations that classic spring training meetings up the ostrich and the clubhouse. So like trying to talk to some of the people that were involved there. I've talked to a couple people. It's sort of on the back burner now, trying to get a hold of everyone else. But it's like those types of stories, I think, are the types of stories I think athletic kind of special. And I know, I mean, this wasn't the story I was working on, but it's an Angel story. Andy McCullough, my colleagues, I was working on story, obviously, how in the visitors clubhouse for Angels games for 20 plus years, they would play Dumb and Dumber on some of the screen. And some of the players had noticed it. Some of the players had no idea it was happening every single day game. But like sort of weird story like that off the wall are the athletic so special. The ability to tell some of the important stories, sort of give athletes to be vulnerable in a place that's maybe has a little bit more space for that stuff than your typical newspaper would.
Mm-hmm. You know, covering the Angels and working for the Athletic, what's been one of your most favorite moments so far up to this point in time?
Oh, that's hard. I mean, because the Angels have not been that good in that stretch. They haven't. I mean, they've been obviously they are always a team that has a lot of notable players, a lot of talented players. I mean, Trout, obviously getting a chance to cover him has been something of a dream for me just because of how player he is. Al Pujols, I mean, it seems like he's nowhere near the same player he used to be, but still the history is there. The production is still a valuable person on a business day. I think one of the cooler stories I were working on was before in training last year, I got out to Louisville, Kentucky, and meet the Angels' top prospect and the top prospect of baseball, Joe Adell, and sort of spend a day with in his hometown and get to know what makes him tick and makes him him. I think that was something that was really cool. He actually drove me around his hometown a little bit and showed me that's where I work out. I watch him work out, and then also sort of see different little things about outside of the ballpark. Tell you a little bit more about the person than who they are at like 3:30 before 7 o'clock start. So I think that was a really cool experience and something that I think I'm obviously very appreciative of being like giving a chance to send places Louisville to work on those types of stories, and something that was something very rewarding for me, and also something that was a really cool experience. A chance to see someone who's sort of my age, but obviously in a completely different position, and see handle those expectations and that success.
Fabian, this is my favorite part of the show. It's called the Fast Five Quick Round. It's 5 quick questions, and you have however long to take to answer them. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
What is your go-to snack?
Eat and say I've been consuming a lot of that.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Favorite sports movie? It's been one of the highly rated, most debated topics in the last week or so, especially on The Athletic. So what would you say your favorite sports movie is?
I think my favorite, since I'm covering baseball, my favorite baseball movie is probably Bull Durham. It's a sort of a to say that this is a sports movie, and it's also a little bit of recent bias, but I just can't stop rewatching Uncut Gems. The movie is spectacular. I think Kevin Garnett, his acting in that's really, really good. So I really enjoy that too.
I tweeted out this past week, what is someone's favorite sports documentary? Do you have a favorite sports documentary?
OJ Made in America. That's amazing. It's amazing filmmaking. 10 hours that I think were just incredibly powerful. I think it's one of those very important pieces of documentary filmmaking has been done. I'm excited for the doc to come out, but I think OJ Made in America sort of is the class of what, especially with what ESPN was able to do over 10 hours there. I think it really managed to tell a story, not just about obviously what happened there, but also what happened in America during that time.
You're the second person this week to vote for OJ Made in America.
Well, I guess that's a good sign. I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your dream vacation spot?
Ooh, I'm lucky. I got to be in a position where my parents really encouraged me to travel a lot as a kid, so I got to see a lot of different things. Um, that's difficult. I mean, any chance to go back to Argentina, which is where my mom's from, is something I really enjoy. Buenos Aires is beautiful, but I think if it's a place I haven't gone before, I really want to try to see Japan or Korea. I think the baseball culture out there is great, and I think obviously the culture in general there is really unique. It's something I really am interested a lot in. I think that's something that'd be really cool to visit and enjoy. And I think obviously I haven't had the chance to go to like Greece yet, so I'm gonna go with either like Tokyo or Athens.
What is your dream car?
I'm not really much of a car guy necessarily. So I don't know. I mean, I drive a Civic now, so it's nothing really too special. But I think if it's a car that's maybe like had like some sort of really cool value, I think the car from Bull Durham, I think it's still on sale somewhere. So like maybe something like that, something that's just really cool and has historical value, maybe cultural value.
For sure. You could almost write your own fun spring trading car story about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like it's easy piece of baseball history there. Might
Mhm.
as well be Cooperstown at this point.
100%. Fabian, my last question for you. I always like to ask this to someone that simply has a passion for baseball. If a 14-year-old kid came up to you right now and told you that they don't understand the game of baseball and they're never going to watch, what would you say to them?
Well, it's funny. Baseball wasn't even my first favorite sport. I don't think it's still my favorite sport. I mean, I enjoy it. I'm obviously passionate about it. I grew up playing soccer, and that's sort of my family's always been big in. But I think
Mhm.
the thing that's made baseball continue to stick out to me is sort of just something I've sort of touched upon. Like, there's something, no matter what city you're in America, in the summer, pretty much every day, there's some sort of baseball game going on. Something about the history to it that Jason Stark alluded to, and you had him on. I think, and also just the fact that there's so many different ways to interpret it. I mean, if you want to be someone who just dives deep into the numbers, you easily can do that, and there's so many ways to do that. I think if you want to be someone who just wants to just watch the game casually, follow your own team, you can do that too. And there's something hyper localized. I think will always exist throughout baseball that maybe exists the same way for other sports. I mean, people travel, people move, and they sort of take their teams with them. But baseball, for the most part, has remained a very local and intense sport in that way. I think that's something I'll always appreciate.
Mhm. I guess a follow up to that, you said soccer is your number one sport. Did you play growing up? And I would say maybe during the off season, would you consider covering some sort of soccer stories?
I played from the time I was like 3 until I was about 16. I wasn't
Okay.
that good. I didn't have the athleticism there, but I always like really appreciated it. I mean, I still play FIFA like, nonstop to this day. Um, and as far as covering it, I mean, the way that soccer is covered is so much different than how we
Mhm.
perceive baseball coverage nowadays. I mean, access is so much different. Some of what the basis of coverage is so much different. I think it'd be cool as like a change of pace. If you schedule me for 30 minutes sitting down Leo Messi, I'm gonna be excited. I'm gonna jump into doing that. But I mean, it's something that obviously be a different challenge. I think I'd enjoy it. I'd definitely be willing to try it. But I know we have really good soccer staff over at the Athletics. I think for the most part, they have got that handled.
Well, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Whole Story podcast today. Where can all of the listeners follow along with you when the baseball season returns? I keep joking with people saying whenever I see a tweet that follows up with the word canceled in it, I'm going to block the word cancel on Twitter and social media because I don't want to think about no baseball in 2020. So where can everyone follow you on Twitter and read your work with the Athletic?
I think if we're already missing baseball this much in April, I think that's gonna sting when it comes like September, October, if there's no baseball. Follow me at the Athletic, obviously. Grab support if you can. But I know we have some good deals going on still. And follow me on Twitter at Fabian Ardaya. I think that's the best way to get to reach me at this point. I mean, obviously, any support for the Athletic would be appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Thank you again for joining us on today's episode.
Thanks for having me, man.